Ahoy there crew, this is your captain speaking, and today we're transforming the entitlement of envy and the desire of lust into strange and divine gods. I've already finished all the other designs in previous videos, but we'll nicely tie those in with the new ones. First we have envy. It's known as the resentment or sadness that is caused by another's good fortune or belongings and the desire to have it for oneself. It often stems from insecurity or a scarcity mindset. I've decided to name her Darinka. It's a Slavic name that means gift, and I have a perfect way to tie that into her story. Her whole thing is being a vampire who longs for the gift of life. I decided to base her off of a blueprint that was used for modern day vampires. For this, I turned to the creature that was called an Upior. These creatures were commonly considered undead that were cursed before death, suddenly died, or someone whose grave was desecrated. Unlike modern vampires, they can walk in the sunlight. They just prefer to attack at night. Common signs that the deceased would become one are a flushed face or having blood under the nails. The flushed face is something I decided to include in Darinka's design. Just like the vampires we know, they drink blood and have superhuman strength. They have another ability that I found interesting though. Upiors can kill people with their screams. They are said to often carry around their severed heads or have glowing wolf-like eyes. I made sure to include the glowing eyes in my design. I don't really want her to walk around with a head in her hands though, so I just gave her a little stitch running across her neck. The punishment for envy is to be sunk into freezing water. I believe this is meant to chill their desires. The best way I could think to portray this is to dress her for cold weather. I imagine she'd also feel cold with being undead and all. She's also outwardly cold, similar to Kimi, who is also one of the others she spends the least time with. In the presence of Kimi, she feels envious and intimidated, so she tends to avoid her. Darinka is very quiet and observant, but Seth is at the top of Darinka's list. She's the introvert that got adopted by the extrovert, so she is often being dragged to various destinations. Darinka definitely enjoys the lively company of Seth though, and by extension Brunhild. As for Davy and Huckleberry, she admires both of their ambitions. She doesn't spend much time with them though. Now that we've got her relationships down, let's talk about her backstory. Darinka was a noble woman born to an adoring family, the gifted child, one would say. When she came of age, many men attempted to obtain her hand in marriage. In the end, she married a man from a faraway land who had swept her off her feet. They were happy, but after a few years, Darinka fell ill. Doctors at the time could not determine a cause or cure, so she died soon after. It was sudden, which is considered something that leads to a person becoming an Upior. Upon rising from the dead, she returned to her home. She wished to see her dear husband. Of course, he chased her away. After all, he knew his adoring wife had died. Heartbroken, she roamed around aimlessly. She was barely surviving. She often peered in through windows, jealous of the living who had a place they belonged, and people who loved them. These were the people she used to quench her hunger for blood. She would take their warmth from them just as it was taken from her. On a night like any other, she heard a voice. It seemed to come from the sky, maybe even the moon. It promised her a loving, warm, and joyous existence. It was tempting, so she accepted the offer. She knew she wouldn't be able to return home, from fear of what her husband might think of her recent acts, even if he were to accept her for what she now is. When ascending, Darinka became the goddess of loss, the undead, and envy. Those that gain her favor are approached by a snake. It's the animal I decided to represent her with, just like all the others have one. It makes for a good match since they both have some nice big fangs. Let's get back to her followers though. Most often they are people experiencing great grief that wish to soothe their hearts. In other cases they are fellow undead that worship or just look up to her. When someone gains Darinka's favor, a lucky situation or opportunity will come to pass, but the results will ultimately be up to them. That is all for Darinka though. I didn't end up giving her green in her color scheme like Envy deserves, but I do love how she looks. She's very cute. For the next sin, we're working with the ultimate desire, lust. It's tied to a strong desire for pleasure. Lust can stem from indulgence of impure thoughts, selfishness, and a lack of self-control, like many of the other sins. I didn't just want to tie it to the extremes, so having this character represent all types of love was a must for me. And what better character to do that with than one I base on Cupid? He'll just be a fully grown man and a harpy though. We'll call him Lyric. It's a Greek name meaning of the lyre, song-like, or a personal and emotive poem. I'd imagine he's a master of the lyre then. Bards are known for being quite lustful, so it's a perfect fit. This is also a perfect way to describe his life as a mortal. He was a well-known wandering bard. People knew him for both his skills and his multiple mistresses. He was popular among men and women, but especially with unhappy wives. There were many times he put himself in danger through these escapades. The husbands of these wives were not happy, after all. It's only natural that some would turn violent. This was what got him killed. He'd been chased outside and struck down by one of those men in the middle of the night. In his final moments, he looked up at the moon, wishing for only one thing: to see the one he treasured the most once again. And that person just so happens to be Seth, the goddess of sloth. Now, you might be wondering how they met. Lyric happened to be a soldier employed by our kingdom long before he was a bard. He was an amazing archer, but had a passion for music. In secret, he practiced, eventually with her as company. It was a way for them to indulge themselves away from their duties. They did take pleasure in each other's company, but they were only friends. Seth is not interested in more than that with him. He is the only one of the Sins who ascended without being offered something first. The strange presence ascending these Sins took some initiative for this one. It was a nice surprise for both Seth and Lyric. When he ascended, he became the god of fertility, love, and lust. His followers are usually people that pray for a fortunate marriage or relationship with their partner. Due to him being a fertility god, he often receives prayers relating to pregnancy and childbirth too. When someone gains his favor, they are approached by a white dove. It's a symbol of peace and love. I was really tempted to make his animal a rabbit, but a dove seems so much more fitting with him being a harpy. The punishment for lust is to be swept around by a strong wind and never being allowed to rest. Making his hair a little more messy was the only way I could think to illustrate this. Now we can finally talk about his relationship with the others. He tends to spend time with the other energetic characters, so Brynhild, Davy, and Seth are the ones he spends the most time with. When he hangs out with Davy, it's either just them or Huckleberry too. Lyric likes drinking just about as much as him though. He doesn't spend much time with Kimi, but he annoys the hell out of her. He keeps trying to make a pass at her, to Huckleberry's annoyance. At least he has a safe space with Seth, even when she drags Dorinka around with them. He hardly notices Dorinka when she is around. I think that's about it for Lyric though. He ended up looking like a tall, skinny doofus, and I love him for that. And with that, my 7 Deadly Sins series is finished. Be sure to check out the videos where I design the others if you haven't already. From these last two, Dorinka has to be my favorite. I love a good undead character, though I'd love to know who your favorite is down in the comments. If you like seeing these deadly sins brought to life, be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss the next character design session. But that is all for today, crew. I'll see you again for our next voyage. Bye bye!